The grand ballroom of the Riverside Hotel glittered with crystal chandeliers and white roses, but Ji-woo Lee couldn't see any of it through her tears. She stood frozen at the altar in her ivory wedding gown, staring at the man she was about to marry, Jae-hyun Park, the golden boy everyone loved, the perfect fiancé her parents had chosen. His hand reached for hers, warm and confident, but all Ji-woo felt was cold dread spreading through her chest. This wasn't supposed to feel wrong. This was supposed to be the happiest day of her life. Yet as the officiant began speaking, Ji-woo's vision blurred with memories of another face, another touch, another promise made years ago. In the back row, hidden among 200 guests, sat Min-ho Kim. His jaw was tight, his hands clenched on his knees as he watched the woman he'd loved for 8 years prepare to marry someone else. He'd promised himself he wouldn't come, that watching Ji-woo walk down the aisle toward another man would destroy him. But he couldn't stay away. Not after the night 3 months ago when she'd shown up at his apartment in the rain, crying about the arranged engagement. Min-ho had held her then, had almost kissed her, had almost told her the truth he'd been hiding since they were 20 years old. Ji-woo's voice trembled as she began reciting her vows. Each word felt like a lie on her tongue. She could feel her mother's approving gaze from the front row, could sense her father's proud smile. The Lee family business would merge with the Park family's real estate empire through this marriage. But as Ji-woo looked into Jae-hyun's eager eyes, she realized with devastating clarity that she couldn't do this. Not when her heart belonged to someone else. "I'm sorry," Ji-woo whispered suddenly. The words were so soft that only Jae-hyun heard them. His smile faltered, confusion flickering across his face. Before he could respond, Ji-woo stepped back. "I'm so sorry, I can't," a collective gasp rippled through the ballroom. Her mother stood up, face pale with shock. But Ji-woo was already moving, gathering her dress, turning away from the altar. She ran. Her heels clicked frantically against the marble floor as she fled down the aisle, past rows of stunned guests. Tears streamed down her face, ruining her makeup. She heard Jae-hyun calling her name, heard her mother's sharp voice, but Ji-woo kept running. She burst through the hotel's front doors into the cool evening air. She just destroyed everything, her family's reputation, Jae-hyun's dignity, her own future. A sleek black car pulled up to the curb. Min-ho sat behind the wheel, his dark eyes intense in the fading light. "Get in," he said quietly, his voice rough with emotion. Ji-woo stared at him, her heart pounding. Behind her, the hotel doors opened, voices shouting her name. She looked at Min-ho one more time and made her choice. She opened the door and slid into the passenger seat, her tears still wet on her face. Min-ho's car pulled away from the Riverside Hotel as shouts echoed behind them. Ji-woo sat frozen in the passenger seat, her wedding dress pooling around her feet like spilled milk. Her hands trembled in her lap, and she couldn't bring herself to look at him. The silence between them was heavy, filled with 8 years of unspoken words and buried feelings. Through the window, the city lights blurred past, each one taking her further from the life she was supposed to live and closer to something terrifying and unknown. "Where are we going?" Ji-woo finally whispered, her voice hoarse from crying. Min-ho's grip tightened on the steering wheel, his knuckles turning white. He didn't answer immediately, his jaw clenched as he navigated through evening traffic. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and careful. "Somewhere your parents can't find you. Not tonight." Ji-woo closed her eyes, fresh tears sliding down her cheeks. She just humiliated Jae-hyun in front of everyone, destroyed her family's business deal, and thrown away everything they'd worked for. And for what? To sit in Min-ho's car with no plan and no future? "You shouldn't have come," Ji-woo said, but there was no conviction in her words. Min-ho let out a bitter laugh. "I've been telling myself that for 8 years." His confession hung in the air between them, dangerous and electric. Ji-woo turned to look at him properly for the first time. In the dim light of passing street lamps, she could see the tension in his profile, the pain he'd been hiding. Min-ho Kim had always been the responsible one, the childhood friend who supported her dreams, who stayed quietly in the background while she built her perfect life with Jae-hyun. "My phone won't stop buzzing," Ji-woo said, pulling the device from her dress pocket. 43 missed calls from her mother. 27 from her father. 15 text messages from Jae-hyun, each one more desperate than the last. She turned the phone off and dropped it like it burned her. Minho pulled into the parking lot of a small motel on the outskirts of town. It wasn't fancy, nothing like the luxury Jiwoo was used to, but it was anonymous. He turned off the engine and finally looked at her. The intensity in his gaze made her breath catch. "Jiwoo," he said softly, and the way he spoke her name made her heart ache. "Why did you get in my car?" She didn't have an answer. Or maybe she had too many answers, none of them simple enough to explain the chaos in her heart. Jiwoo stood in the small motel room, still wearing her wedding dress, feeling completely out of place. Minho had gotten them separate rooms, always the gentleman, always keeping his distance. But now he stood in her doorway, neither of them ready to say goodbye. The fluorescent light flickered overhead, casting shadows across his face. "You should rest," he said, but he didn't move. Jiwoo nodded, but her feet stayed planted on the worn carpet. 8 years of careful friendship, of boundaries neither dared to cross, and now they were here, alone, with nothing left to lose. "Do you remember the night we met?" Jiwoo asked suddenly. Minho's expression softened, a ghost of a smile touching his lips. "Columbia University. First week of freshman year. You were lost trying to find the library." Jiwoo felt a weak laugh escape her throat. "You drew me a map on a coffee shop napkin." What she didn't say was that she'd kept that napkin for 3 years, tucked in her favorite book, until Jae-hyun had found it and asked too many questions. What she didn't say was that she'd known even then, at 18, that Minho Kim was going to break her heart somehow. Minho took a step into the room, and Jiwoo's breath hitched. "Jiwoo, I need to tell you something. Something I should have told you years ago." His voice was rough, urgent. But before he could continue, his phone rang, shattering the moment. He glanced at the screen and his face went pale. "It's Jae-hyun." Jiwoo felt her stomach drop. Minho and Jae-hyun had been friends once, back in college, before the engagement, before everything got complicated. She'd never told Jae-hyun about her history with Minho, about the feelings she'd tried so hard to bury. "Don't answer it," Jiwoo whispered, but Minho was already stepping back into the hallway. She heard his quiet voice speaking, heard Jae-hyun's raised tone even through the phone. When Minho returned, his expression was unreadable. "He's looking for you. He says he won't let you go that easily. Jiwoo, there's something you need to know about why your parents arranged this marriage." The air felt suddenly cold. "What do you mean?" But Minho's next words changed everything. "Your father owes the Park family $3 million. This wedding wasn't just business, Jiwoo. It was a debt payment." Jiwoo felt the room spin. $3 million. Her entire life, her engagement, her wedding, all of it had been a transaction to cover her father's debt. She sank onto the edge of the motel bed, her wedding dress crumpling around her. "How long have you known?" Her voice came out hollow, distant. Minho knelt in front of her, his eyes full of pain. 6 months. I found out by accident when I was handling some legal documents for my firm. Jiwoo, I wanted to tell you, but I didn't have proof, and I knew you wouldn't believe me without it. So you just watched me plan a wedding to pay off my father's mistakes? Jiwoo's anger flared suddenly, hot and bright. She stood up, forcing Minho to step back. You let me choose flowers and write vows and pretend I was in love, knowing it was all a lie? Minho's jaw tightened. What was I supposed to do? Storm into your engagement party and announce that your parents sold you? You were happy, Jiwoo. Or at least you were pretending to be. And I had no right. He stopped himself, his hands clenching into fists at his sides. No right to what? Jiwoo demanded, moving closer to him. The air between them crackled with tension. Minho's eyes met hers, and for the first time in 8 years, she saw everything he'd been hiding. No right to love you, he said quietly, the words breaking something open between them. Not when you belonged to someone else. Not when you'd chosen Jae-hyun. Not when telling you the truth would destroy your family and leave you with nothing. Jiwoo's breath caught in her throat. The confession hung between them, years of buried feelings finally exposed. She wanted to be angry, wanted to push him away, but all she felt was a devastating relief. "I never chose Jae-hyun," she whispered. "My parents chose him. I didn't know how to say no." Minho reached up slowly, his hand hovering near her face, asking permission. When she didn't pull away, he gently wiped a tear from her cheek. The touch sent electricity through her entire body. Ji-woo closed her eyes, leaning into his hand, 8 years of longing compressed into this single moment. But before either of them could move closer, Minho's phone buzzed with a text message. He glanced at it and his face went rigid. "Ji-woo, we need to leave. Now. Jae-hyun knows where we are." They threw Ji-woo's belongings into Minho's car within minutes, her wedding dress abandoned on the motel room floor like a ghost of her former life. Minho drove fast through the dark streets, checking his rearview mirror every few seconds. Ji-woo's heart pounded as she watched the city lights fade behind them. "How did he find us so quickly?" she asked, her voice shaking. Minho's expression was grim. "Jae-hyun has resources. His family owns half the surveillance systems in this city. I should have thought of that." They drove for 2 hours in tense silence, finally stopping at Minho's cabin near Lake Tahoe. It was a small place, rustic and isolated, somewhere Minho had bought years ago as an escape from his demanding law career. As they stepped inside, Ji-woo realized this was the first time they'd truly been alone together, with no one watching, no expectations weighing them down. The cabin smelled like pine and old wood. Minho lit a fire in the stone fireplace while Ji-woo stood awkwardly in borrowed sweatpants and his oversized hoodie. "You can take the bedroom," Minho said, not meeting her eyes. "I'll sleep on the couch." But Ji-woo didn't move toward the bedroom. Instead, she walked to where he stood by the fire, her heart hammering in her chest. "Minho, what you said at the motel. Did you mean it?" He turned to face her, the firelight casting shadows across his face. "Every word. I've loved you since the day you asked me if I believed in soulmates. You were 19, drunk on cheap wine, and you looked at me like I held all the answers in the world." Ji-woo remembered that night. They'd been sitting on the campus lawn, stars above them, and she'd been trying so hard not to notice how her heart raced whenever he smiled. "I was asking because I thought you might be mine," she whispered. Minho's eyes widened in shock. Before either of them could second-guess, Ji-woo closed the distance between them, her hands reaching for his face. "I'm done running from this," she breathed. Their lips met in a kiss that felt like coming home after years of being lost. 8 years of denial, of friendship masking something deeper, finally exploded into this moment. Minho's arms wrapped around her waist, pulling her closer, and Ji-woo melted into him. But just as the kiss deepened, headlights flooded through the cabin windows. A car door slammed outside. Jae-hyun stood on the cabin porch, his expensive suit wrinkled, his hair disheveled in a way Ji-woo had never seen. He looked through the window directly at her, his expression a mixture of betrayal and desperation. Minho stepped protectively in front of Ji-woo, but she gently moved him aside. "I need to face him," she said quietly. When she opened the door, Jae-hyun's eyes were red-rimmed, and she realized with a pang of guilt that he'd been crying. "Ji-woo, please. Just talk to me." They sat at Minho's small kitchen table, an awkward triangle of tangled relationships. Jae-hyun's hands shook as he poured himself water from the pitcher Minho had set out. "I didn't know," Jae-hyun began, his voice hoarse. "About the debt. About my parents using our marriage as leverage. I found out tonight when I confronted my father about why you ran." He looked at Ji-woo with genuine anguish. "I thought you loved me. Or at least that we could build something real together. Was it all pretend?" Ji-woo felt tears sting her eyes. Jae-hyun had been kind to her, patient, everything a good husband should be on paper. But kindness wasn't love, and patience wasn't passion. "I tried to love you," she said honestly. "I really did try, Jae-hyun. But my heart was never fully mine to give." Jae-hyun's gaze shifted to Minho, understanding dawning in his eyes. "It's him, isn't it? It's always been him." The words weren't accusing, just resigned and infinitely sad. Minho remained silent, his jaw tight, letting Ji-woo handle this moment. She reached across the table, placing her hand over Jae-hyun's. You deserve someone who loves you completely, without reservation. That person isn't me. Jae-hyun pulled his hand away, standing abruptly. My father won't let this go, Ji-woo. He'll come after your family for the debt. He'll destroy your parents' business, and he'll make sure Minho's law career is finished. He's already made calls. The threat hung heavy in the air. Ji-woo felt her blood run cold. What are you saying? Jae-hyun looked at her with something like pity. I'm saying that if you don't come back and marry me, everyone you love will pay the price. My father doesn't forgive betrayal. He moved toward the door, then paused. You have 48 hours to decide. Choose your heart, or choose their survival. After Jae-hyun left, Ji-woo collapsed onto the couch, her entire body shaking. Minho sat beside her, close but not touching, the weight of impossible choices crushing them both. I have to go back, Ji-woo whispered, her voice breaking. I can't let my parents lose everything. I can't let you lose your career because of me. Minho turned to her sharply, his eyes blazing. No. We'll find another way. We'll get lawyers, we'll expose what his family is doing, but they both knew it was futile. The Park family had power, connections, and ruthlessness that Minho's modest law practice couldn't match. Ji-woo stood and walked to the window, watching the sun rise over the lake. She'd had one night of freedom, one perfect kiss, and now reality was demanding payment. Maybe this is what I deserve, she said quietly. For being a coward all these years. For not choosing you when I had the chance. Minho was behind her suddenly, his hands on her shoulders, turning her to face him. Don't say that. Don't you dare blame yourself for your parents' mistakes or for a system designed to trap people like us. Then what do I do? Ji-woo's tears fell freely now. How do I choose between my family's survival and my own happiness? Minho cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs wiping away her tears. You don't have to choose alone. Whatever you decide, I'm with you. If you go back to Jae-hyun, I'll find a way to protect your family from the outside. If you stay with me, we'll fight together. But Ji-woo, I need you to know something. His voice dropped to a whisper. I would rather have one real day with you than a lifetime of watching you belong to someone else. The confession broke something inside her. Ji-woo surged forward, kissing him desperately, pouring 8 years of longing into the embrace. Minho responded with equal intensity, his arms wrapping around her waist, lifting her slightly off the ground. They stumbled backward toward the bedroom, a tangle of limbs and racing hearts, knowing this might be all they ever got. Every touch felt like both a beginning and an ending. But as they reached the doorway, Ji-woo's phone rang. She froze, recognizing her mother's ringtone. Minho's arms loosened reluctantly as Ji-woo answered. Her mother's voice was ice cold. Come home immediately, Ji-woo. Your father is in the hospital. Heart attack. The doctors say if you want to say goodbye, you need to come now. Minho drove through the night, his knuckles white on the steering wheel as Ji-woo sat rigid in the passenger seat, her phone clutched in trembling hands. The hospital loomed ahead, its bright lights cutting through the darkness like accusatory fingers. When they arrived, Ji-woo's mother waited in the corridor outside the ICU, her face a mask of cold fury beneath the exhaustion. This is your fault, she hissed as Ji-woo approached. Your father's heart couldn't take the shame you brought on our family. The business partners withdrawing, the Park family's threats, it was too much. Ji-woo felt the words pierce through her like knives, but before she could respond, Minho stepped forward. Mrs. Lee, your husband's condition isn't Ji-woo's responsibility. He made business decisions that put your family in debt long before this wedding was even planned. Ji-woo's mother's eyes narrowed dangerously. And who are you to speak about our family matters? The man who stole my daughter on her wedding day? You've destroyed everything we built. A nurse interrupted, calling Ji-woo into the ICU room where her father lay connected to monitors and tubes. Mr. Lee looked small and fragile in the hospital bed, nothing like the powerful businessman Ji-woo had always known. His eyes opened when she approached, and he reached weakly for her hand. Ji-woo, he whispered, his voice barely audible. I'm sorry. I should have told you the truth about the debt, about why I needed you to marry Jae-hyun. I was trying to protect you from my failures. Fresh tears streamed down Ji-woo's face as she held her father's hand. Dad, you should have trusted me. We could have found another way together. Her father's grip tightened slightly. There's something else you need to know. The Park family, they're not just demanding the debt payment. Mr. Park has evidence of illegal transactions I made years ago. If you don't marry Jae-hyun, he'll send me to prison. The revelation hit Ji-woo like a physical blow. It wasn't just about money anymore, it was about her father's freedom, possibly his life. How long have you known? She asked, her voice hollow. 6 months. Since the day I agreed to your engagement. Mr. Lee's heart monitor began beeping erratically, and nurses rushed in. Ji-woo was ushered out of the room, leaving her standing in the hallway beside Min-ho. Through the ICU window, she watched doctors work frantically on her father. Min-ho pulled her into his arms, and she buried her face in his chest. In 48 hours, she would have to give Jae-hyun her answer. And now, that answer seemed inevitable. Ji-woo stood outside the Park family mansion exactly 48 hours after Jae-hyun's ultimatum, wearing a simple black dress that felt like funeral attire. Min-ho had driven her here, both of them silent during the entire journey, knowing what she had come to do. Before she could knock, the massive front door opened, and Jae-hyun stood there looking exhausted but relieved. You came, he said softly. I wasn't sure you would. Ji-woo nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. Behind Jae-hyun, she could see his father, Mr. Park, watching from the study with cold, calculating eyes. They sat in the formal living room, expensive artwork surrounding them like silent witnesses to her surrender. I'll marry you, Ji-woo said, the words tasting like ash. But I have conditions. You drop all threats against Min-ho's career. You forgive my father's debt completely, and you destroy whatever evidence you have of his illegal transactions. And you never, ever contact Min-ho again. Jae-hyun leaned forward, his expression unreadable. And in return? You'll be my wife? You'll try to make this marriage real? Ji-woo looked him directly in the eyes. I'll be your wife in name. I'll stand beside you at events, fulfill my duties. But my heart, Jae-hyun, my heart will never be yours. Can you live with that? The question hung between them for a long moment. Jae-hyun stood and walked to the window, his shoulders tense. When he turned back, his expression had changed into something Ji-woo had never seen before, determination mixed with an odd sort of respect. No, he said quietly. No, I can't live with that. And you shouldn't have to either. Ji-woo's eyes widened in shock. Jae-hyun crossed the room and took her hands gently. I've been thinking about what you said at the cabin. About deserving someone who loves me completely. You were right. What are you saying? Ji-woo's heart began racing with something that felt dangerously like hope. Jae-hyun smiled sadly. I'm saying that I'm going to tell my father no. I'm going to stand up to him for the first time in my life. Your father's debt? I'll pay it myself with my own inheritance. The evidence? I already destroyed it last night. And Min-ho's career? He never had anything to worry about, those were empty threats my father made that I should have shut down immediately. Tears spilled down Ji-woo's cheeks as she stared at him in disbelief. Why would you do this? She whispered. Jae-hyun squeezed her hands once before letting go. Because watching you run from our wedding taught me something. Love shouldn't be a cage, Ji-woo. It should be wings. And somewhere out there is a woman who will love me the way you love Min-ho. I deserve to find her, and you deserve to be with him. He walked to the door and opened it. Go. Before I change my mind. Min-ho was waiting outside. Ji-woo stood frozen for a heartbeat, then ran. She burst through the front door and found Min-ho leaning against his car, his face etched with resignation. When he saw her running toward him, confusion flickered across his features. Ji-woo, what? She threw herself into his arms, laughing and crying simultaneously. Take me home, Min-ho. Take me home. 6 months later, Ji-woo stood in Min-ho's apartment, their apartment now, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and pink. The journey hadn't been easy. Her mother had needed months to forgive her, and the whispers in their social circles still followed them everywhere. But Ji-woo had started her own small business consulting firm, built on her own terms, and her father, recovered from his heart attack, had slowly begun to respect her choices. Min-ho wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "What are you thinking about?" he murmured against her hair. "I'm thinking about how different my life could have been," Ji-woo said softly, leaning back into his embrace. "If I had walked down that aisle. If I hadn't gotten into your car. If Jae-hyun hadn't let me go." Min-ho turned her gently to face him, his eyes full of the love he no longer had to hide. "But you did get in my car. And we're here now. That's all that matters." Ji-woo smiled, reaching up to touch his face. "I heard Jae-hyun is dating someone. A museum curator. His father apparently hates her, which means she's probably perfect for him." Min-ho laughed, the sound warm and genuine. "Good. He deserves happiness too." He pulled a small velvet box from his pocket, and Ji-woo's breath caught. "Ji-woo Lee, I've loved you for 8 years. I've watched you from a distance, supported you through wrong choices, and waited for the moment when you were finally free to choose your own path. I don't want to rush you, and I know we're still building our life together, but I need you to know." He opened the box, revealing a simple but beautiful ring. "I want forever with you. When you're ready. No pressure, no timeline. Just, eventually." Tears blurred Ji-woo's vision as she looked at the ring, then at Min-ho's hopeful face. 8 years of longing, months of fighting for their right to be together, and now this moment perfect in its simplicity. "Yes," she whispered, then louder, "Yes, Min-ho. I don't need to wait. I've already wasted enough time being afraid." Min-ho's face broke into the most beautiful smile she'd ever seen as he slipped the ring onto her finger. "No more running?" he asked softly. "No more running," Ji-woo confirmed, pulling him into a kiss that felt like a promise, like coming home, like every romantic moment she'd ever dreamed of finally coming true. When they pulled apart, Min-ho rested his forehead against hers. "I'm going to marry you the right way this time. Small ceremony, just people who love us, and absolutely no one you don't want there. You'll walk toward me because you choose to, not because anyone is forcing you." Ji-woo laughed through her happy tears. "That sounds perfect. As long as at the end of it, I get to drive away with you." Min-ho grinned. "Always, Ji-woo. From now on, we drive away together." Outside their window, the city lights began to twinkle as night fell, and for the first time in her life, Ji-woo felt completely, perfectly free. She had chosen her own path, fought for her own happiness, and found a love worth every sacrifice. This was her real beginning, not running from a wedding, but running toward a life built on truth, choice, and a love that had waited 8 years to finally bloom.